This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and/or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Hey, glad to have you on board today. Hope you've had a good week, and I hope the coming week or your weekend, because we publish these typically on Friday. Hope your weekend's going to look good. Love to hear from you, of course. wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Ideas for the shows, perhaps criticisms, comments, things you'd like to discuss. Would love to hear from you on that. Also, join us on Facebook on our Pest Geek Podcast channel there. I guess that's not the right word. Our group, our Facebook group. It's not really a channel. We'd love to have you there. We've got hundreds of people who are involved in wildlife control and pest control, sharing ideas and discussing their triumphs and wins and losses, I guess, as well on the site. Today's topic is not one that I came up with, but was actually a question from one of our listeners. I think is when it originally came in, so I'd say viewers now. The person had a list of questions he asked, and this is certainly one of them that he asked, and I'm responding to it. So if you ever have doubts about whether I look at your email, I do, and so I do want to look at those and get ideas for future shows and even how to improve, and of course the criticism is welcome as well. You can, so his question was, can you give us 5 ways that we can give back to the community sort of in a charitable way? And that's certainly a fair question. And I do think that is an area in our industry that we have not fully embraced. Now, I understand that it is difficult at times. We don't have often the labor and the financial wherewithal to do some of these charitable activities. I mean, relatively speaking, the wildlife control industry here in the United States is young, and it still is young. I would call it probably right now maybe a teenager. It certainly hasn't been around as long as pest control, which is certainly a 30-year-old adult. And so we're significantly smaller, not only in size, but also in age and economic power. And we always will be. We'll never catch up to the pest control industry per se. We are beginning to spread our wings a lot more, and we're probably getting closer to that age of majority in terms of the 18 years. Now, I don't mean 18 years literally. I mean 18 years in terms of when does an industry really mature enough? We're not quite there yet. We've certainly made a lot of strides. We had some difficult years in the adolescence, and so now that we're kind of settled in, things have definitely improved. But why do I mention that? Well, because when you're doing charitable work is a cost. It's a cost to your business. And a lot of wildlife control operators are really stressed for time and money, and so they don't have a lot of either, because wildlife control is a very labor-intensive business. This is one of the disadvantages of wildlife control, because we don't have the chemicals and the pesticides in our in our industry that helps us gain greater levels of efficiency and profitability. So to ask a wildlife control operator to take a portion of their earnings and a portion of their time and contribute that in a charitable way as a business, that can become challenging. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, and I would certainly suggest that it is good to be charitable, and I think that's sort of an obligation. As a Christian, we are obligated to be charitable. You should be giving to your church if you are a Christian. Whatever religion you happen to be, I'm assuming that you demonstrate your commitment to that religion by what you give. Because we all worship something. Some of you may say, "Oh, Stephen, I'm an atheist." It doesn't matter. There's what's called functional religion. Everyone has a religion. Whether you acknowledge that existence or not I can't help you there. But you have a religion whether you like it or not. And everyone, as I say, everyone goes to church on Sunday. It's just a matter of what church they're going to. You may say, "I don't go to church at all." Well, if you're going to a golf course, that's your church. If you're if you're just sleeping in, that's your church. Everyone worships something, or in many cases, multiple things. My point ultimately is, I think that even if you are a non-theist or a non-Christian or whatever, I think it's beneficial to be charitable. And I could probably make a little bit of a limited case that there's just something about making you feel good, if that's a good enough benefit. But I also think that we can make a business case that charitable giving on the part of your company can enhance your bottom line. And that's certainly what a lot of businesses are doing today. They're always telling you about how they're contributing a certain amount of their money to a certain cause. They're trying to get that halo effect, what's called the halo effect, where you're doing something and you're virtue signaling and you're telling one, "Hey, I'm a good person, I'm a good company, come do business with me," because that's important to a lot of people. Right or wrong, that's just the reality of our situation. So as our industry matures, I do think more of us in this industry should consider how we can give back to the community. And I do think that is a valuable exercise. Now, let me put a caveat in here before I get too far. If you are a Christian, understand that whenever you do charitable work and you do that in a manner so that you're hoping to get credit for that among your customers or business contemporaries and your colleagues, understand that that is your reward. Christian teaching, I can't talk about other religions, but I would assume that there's probably some elements of truth there as well in this, or agreement, not truth. I would say agreement on this issue. That is, if you do something for public praise, that is your reward. What that means in a Christian context, it means that if you do something in a charitable way, you got to do it secretly. The Bible uses a phrase, "Don't let the right hand know what the left hand's doing," or "Don't let the left hand know what the right hand's doing." The idea is you do this in a manner that you're not looking, you're doing it quietly and secretly. Why? Because you want God to bless you. But God says, look, if you're getting credit from the public, you're not going to get it from me. Now, that doesn't mean if someone sees it and you get credit, you lose your blessing. No, it just means that we all know there's different ways of giving. You can give quietly, or you can say, "Hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. I'm giving, I'm giving, I'm giving." There's two different ways of doing that. And I think you can get the distinction. Now, that's in the Christian theology. You may say, who put me in charge? I'm a trained theologian. If you didn't know that, I have degrees in that particular field. And so you can, and I would suggest that's an agreed upon no matter what branch of Christianity you go to. I think I'm pretty confident that whether you're Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, mainline Protestant, conservative Protestant, evangelical, fundamentalist, whatever, they're all going to agree with that. I don't think that is a controversial doctrine in whatever branch of Christianity you have. Now, that being said, whatever your religious convictions are, I think it's a good idea to do charitable work. Why? Because as I tell people, it's always good to do good, even if you get credit for it, let's say. Doing good is always good no matter what the motive. That's kind of a comment I make, because sometimes people say, well, I won't do this because I don't have the right attitude. And I would answer, do what is right no matter what your attitude is. The attitudes follow behavior, and our attitudes and our feelings change. And so a lot of times people use their feelings as an excuse not to do good. And you know why? Because the people that receive the charity really don't care about your attitudes. You know, if I'm hungry, whether you're giving me food to make you feel good or to get somehow public credit, I may not be happy with that per se, but I'm still going to want the food. So do what is right no matter what your motive is. Okay? And certainly charitable giving, I think, is a good thing, and I want to commend it because I think it's valuable. Now, I also think it can be used in a positive way for your business in terms of helping market your company as a player within the community, in that you are contributing. You're not just simply taking. Now, that's an unfortunate thing because a lot of people hate capitalism. Capitalism is a virtuous activity because you are performing a service for a wage. And you're performing an activity for a wage. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing immoral about that. That is the way, I would argue, God built the system. And that's why we're supposed to work. And so when we're working, we are contributing to the well-being of society because we are performing a wage. That's a lot different than being a layabout. And by a layabout, I mean someone who is capable of working and who refuses to work, and they're on the public dole or on the charity of others. That is a layabout. That obviously is not virtuous. But as a company, you're being virtuous by performing a service in being honest with your customers and performing an appropriate service for them. And wildlife control is certainly one of those appropriate services. But I'm going a bit further here. When we talk about charitable giving, you are giving away something and not getting a financial return for that activity. That's what we mean by charity. And there's different ways of giving charity. So getting back to the original statement or the original topic of this podcast, what are 5 ways you can give back or do charitable giving to the community as a wildlife control operator? I'm going to focus that on wildlife control operators. I know that pest control operators listen to me as well, and I'm glad to have you. But our focus here obviously is on vertebrate pest control. So what are some ways? And by the way, these principles apply to you in the pest control world as well. So I wrote a few notes down. So the first way I suggested, and that is volunteer your services. And by that I mean perform your wildlife control services for a person or an organization that may not have the financial wherewithal to pay you for it. Now, what are some examples of that? How about a battered women's shelter that's having squirrel problems or having mouse problems, for instance? They don't have a lot of free money floating around to pay to have you come and kill mice or have you come and remove those squirrels. You're offering the battered women's shelter to manage that situation would be a tremendous blessing because it would help protect their building and they don't have to pay for it. Pest control is not something typically charitable organizations have a carve out for. You'll often probably be paid out of upkeep of the structure, right? So they don't need that extra expense, and you're being able to come in there and perform something you're doing every day for paying customers would be a tremendous blessing to them. And it would provide you that your name will go around because charitable organizations communicate with one another. And that would be a very valuable for your company in terms of marketing. So if that would be your motive. You could also volunteer your services to individuals in the community that just lack the income or the financial resources necessary to pay you. Think about certain senior citizens, impoverished groups, nonprofit organizations, maybe religious institutions. Those are ways that you can perform your services. Now, you may say, Stephen, I can't afford to give someone a free lunch on that. Okay. You could have something like substantial discounts. Maybe you're charging them only 50% of your fee. And from your perspective, that's maybe just covering your operating cost, such as maybe the gas and maybe the wages of your worker, and maybe all of your profit is out the door. But the idea is you have different ways of skinning this cat, so to speak. You can do your charitable giving in a variety of ways. You can say, you know what, we're going to donate our labor, but we're going to charge you for the materials. We're going to donate the materials, but we're going to charge you for labor. I mean, you can work this in a variety of different ways. What's the second way? Well, the second way is simply to give money directly. Rather than you say, Stephen, I don't have the time to have my workers doing work for companies or organizations where they're not being paid. I just don't have that ability. It's easier for me to write a check. That is a great way to give to a charitable organization and to be giving back to the community. Write a check. There's often things like the different foundations. There's fund drives that you can participate in. There's a whole host of charitable organizations. And I would just encourage you to find a charitable organization that works in your community and has a public face in that community that people value. And otherwise, you probably have to go look at, is this an organization that, are they spending most of their money in administration, or are they actually helping people? And there are organizations that help, things like wildlife, I heard of wildlife control operatives that contribute to the animal shelter in town. I would be cautious with that, to be quite frank, but I know that not all animal shelters have adopted an animal rights perspective. And so, make sure you're not giving money to people that hate what you do. I would not recommend that. Choose wisely. Choose an organization where you can have an impact, in whether it be for your business or impact in your community, or both. And I think if you thought for a few moments, you could think of a couple of charitable organizations where they are a valued constituency in your community. You can also think about giving to your local school system. You could say, you know what, we want, fall is here. You'll probably hear this. You'll probably hear this in October. But you could say, we want to contribute money to teachers so they have more school supplies for their classroom, elementary kids or something. There's often a tremendous need among teachers to have pencils and paper and craft type things. A lot of times teachers spend that out of their own pocket. So that is something you could contribute to. Perhaps go to Staples and just buy a whole bunch of stuff, or give a teacher a Staples card and say, thank you for your service. You could do that with the principal, hand it to the principal and say, who is a teacher in your, maybe one of the younger teachers, they don't have a lot of money when they first start, and do it that way. But these are not difficult conversations to have, and people would welcome talking with you and giving you options in this regard, and they would be grateful for it. You could volunteer. So you may say, well, Stephen, you mentioned volunteer services in number one. Yes, but this is different. This is not volunteering your services. This is simply volunteering your time as an individual. You may want to, rather than do wildlife control work or give money, you may want to give your time to someone. A lot of charitable organizations need secretarial help. They may need janitorial help. They may need people to call donors or to fill stuff envelopes, or a whole host of things that could be done. So you could volunteer. Think about something like adopting a highway. Now, that's not wildlife control, right? But you could have a sign up and adopt a highway and have your company go out where it's not, You're not paying out of pocket per se, but you are paying your volunteer time. Have people wear your company uniform and get out there and clean the highway of litter and debris. And it's often a very simple thing to do. And you can contact your state highway department and find out ways to do that and and they'll put a sign up for you. And you can, do this twice a year, and that's your contribution to the community, and you'll have a sign up there noting that you are doing this. You can also do something in the sense where where your contribution to the community, this is number 4, where your contribution to the charity is giving you marketing power. Let me give an illustration to that. You could sponsor a Little League team. So it could be I don't know, I'm going to use something really weird here just so I don't walk over someone's copyright or trademark or something. Animal Killers Little League team, obviously no one's going to have that. So that would be something where you're paying for their uniforms and have your company name emblazoned on it. And now when the parents are out there, they're like, hey, a certain wildlife control company is sponsoring these kids and they're going to be out there playing for a couple of months. And that would give you tremendous cachet within a community. And parents would love that, right? And you might get in the newspaper and something along those lines. Where that would be something where you're marketing, where you're doing something and you're getting a direct marketing impact for that. You could go on, public broadcasting and pay for an hour of radio and have that. They'll mention you as a sponsor of this particular show. Those are certainly other opportunities for you. And so, and understand that a lot of these things, they vary in price dramatically. So, obviously the more money you're spending, the more bang you're probably going to get out of it per se, if you're looking to market your business and get that halo effect. And then number 5, you could do something like as participate in someone else's charitable event. Think of it like you'll have a walkathon for cancer or something, or doing some sort of a marathon or a 5K run, any host of activities along those lines where you as a company can be maybe wearing your uniform and you as a unit are doing the walk. And you are participating in helping this charity by raising money to help that particular charity. So you have, I've listed more than 5 here if you want to break it down individually, but let's kind of go over that list again. You can volunteer your services, the services you provide on a daily basis. You can just simply give money, just write a check. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You could volunteer your time for a particular service or a particular charity. Just volunteer your time. So where before you're doing your time that's linked to your specialty, but here you're giving time that just maybe a skill you have, maybe you're doing typing for them, maybe doing walking. You could sponsor a particular event, like a baseball team, Little League baseball team, or Little League softball team. You could sponsor the event. Or you could participate as a group in someone else's charitable event. Let's say they're having a charity event and you buy one of their tables and have your people show up. That is another way of contributing back to the community. I think at the end here, ultimately, find something you value. Find something that you feel good about, that's important to you. There are a host of charities out there, whether they're religious, whether they're for certain health issues, whether they're for certain public policy issues. There are charities out there that, help wildlife. Maybe it's working with your rehabilitator in the area where they are in desperate need of funds. And that would be something that you could. Many states don't allow them to charge but they would allow donations. So you need to kind of check that out, and that may be something that's really tied into your company as a wildlife control company. But nevertheless, find something that you are willing to contribute to and be helpful in that particular regard. And then if you're thinking deeper, so find something you're passionate about is certainly one way, or find something that your community values is very important if you're looking for a way to get credit back to your company to get that halo effect. Because again, there's two ways to give charity. You can give it secretly, or you can give it publicly, like with a trumpet. You're going to blow your own horn on this. So whichever way you go, I'm going to encourage you to give, because I think even giving when your motives are wrong is still good. It may not be as good, but it's still good. And I want you to think about that. I'm sure some of your brains are like thinking about that for a little bit. But always do what is right. And I do hope as an industry we would participate more in the community and into our social fabric, and pointing out to people that we are not just people that should be kept in a closet, but that we give valuable services to our community, and we're willing to contribute because we care about how our areas are living and how people are living in our environment and all that sort of thing. And so I think that's a valuable point. Well, I hope that was helpful for you today. I would love to hear comments or put something up on our Facebook page noting, hey, Stephen, we took your advice and we did something here, because we're coming into the Christmas season here. I know I'm talking about it very early, but it'll be happening sooner than you think. And that's certainly a time where at the end of the year, many people begin to start thinking about charitable giving, whether they're Christians or not, right? So certainly for tax policy, that's certainly important as well. Well, and I would love to hear from you. So put it up on Facebook page or drop me an email. Again, I'm Stephen Vantassel, Wildlife Control Consultant, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. Do take a few moments, drop me a line at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. If you have ideas for shows or topics you'd like to cover, reach out to me. I'd love to hear them. If you'd like to be interviewed on the show, reach out to me again. We have a lot of things we can talk about, and I'd love to get information out to our listeners and constituency. People think, does it cost anything? No, it doesn't cost anything, and I don't ask anything from you either, other than to show up when we have our appointment. That would be most helpful. So again, I'm Stephen Vantassel. This is Living the Wildlife. Why? Because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everyone.